I've decided to ditch my Superzoom lens. Let me explain why. I've been a massive fan of these lenses. Currently I own the Nikon 28 to 300mm VR lens, and prior to that on the DX format I had the 18 to 200mm from Nikon as well. And these lenses are amazing. I've really enjoyed using them over the years. In total I've probably been using these for 9 years. I've taken them all over the world, from Mount Everest base camp to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, and they've never ever let me down. The reason that I've stuck by this lens so far is ultimately it's a fantastic travel lens. It manages to pack in a huge focal range into a relatively small compact unit. So this means that I can pack it in my bag and be confident no matter what scenario I'm presented with, I'll have the focal range to deal with that situation. So that's mainly the main reason that I've actually stuck by this, but probably also I'm a creature of habit, and because I've owned a Superzoom lens for years and years, I've never really stopped to question why I actually own it. Essentially, this lens is a compromise. You're sacrificing optical performance for the flexibility and portability of the lens. It's a compromise I've always understood. I realised that the performance of this wasn't outstanding, but rightly or wrongly, it's a compromise I chose to make. I valued the portability and flexibility that this gave me. However, my feelings on this compromise have started to change in recent months, and I think the key to that is I purchased the Nikon D850 body last year, and now that I've been shooting with that for a number of months, I've come to see the shortcomings in this lens and these style of lenses a lot more clearly than I ever did before, and for me it's really started to shift my priorities away from that portability in favour of the actual optical performance. I feel at the moment that shooting with this kind of lens is a waste on the camera body I've got at the moment, and it's almost bottlenecking its performance. The optical shortcomings of this lens are now being showcased like never before. Honestly, when you get a high resolution camera like the D850, you'll see things that you don't want to see in your images. It's really not flattering. If there's any deficiencies in your shot whatsoever, they will be as clear as day, and I'm now seeing this in a totally different light. I'm seeing a real lack of sharpness in a lot of my images, particularly at the extremes of the focal range. So when I'm getting up and above 200mm on this, or down and below 35mm, that's when the lack of sharpness for me is starting to creep in with this, and I'm not happy about it at all. Perhaps because I've owned these Nikon Superzooms for so long, I've become utterly blinded to a lot of their deficiencies and weaknesses. You don't miss what you've never had, and perhaps that's the case here. But I've started to look at it a lot more objectively, and I'm starting to see more things that I don't like. For example, the autofocus on this can be a bit sluggish at times. When I was shooting my Sri Lanka vlogs a few weeks ago, it was painfully slow at times, it really was. The vignetting can be very heavy at certain focal ranges, and the distortions can be quite extreme too. Plus, it's not the fastest bit of glass in the world, it's quite a slow lens, but that's all part of that compromise, and I feel it's a compromise I'm not willing to make anymore. Another annoyance that I've found is this lens doesn't have any kind of tripod mount on the actual lens itself, and I'm finding when I'm shooting at longer focal ranges on my tripod, the centre of gravity changes, and it means that this lens has got a real tendency to actually droop down. No matter how good your tripod is, or how tight you actually tighten the head off, it's got a real tendency to slowly drop off, and I think it's affecting the sharpness in some of my images. It's only something I've really realised recently, totally overlooked on my part. Another thing that I hate about this lens, and this is a lens I love a lot, but it does have its areas of extreme weaknesses. you'll see on this rubber grip that goes round the end of the lens, when I take this to hot climates and it's sitting in my camera bag, I imagine the environment in that bag can get quite hot. But what happens on this lens is this rubber grip warps in the heat. And it's not just a defect on this lens. I've had this on the previous super zoom that I used as well, the 18-200. Now, I don't know if this is something specific to the super zoom range or whether this is across Nikon generally, but I've only ever experienced this on the Nikon super zooms. And essentially this warps and you end up having to actually trim off some of the excess grip and glue it back down. It's a real annoyance. And I'm hoping that I can say goodbye to it for good. So in conclusion, I've decided to say goodbye to my Nikon Super Zoom. After 9 years, it's time to move on, I think. And the conclusion I've made is I'm going to move to faster glass, I think. And I'm going to take the focal range from 28mm to 300, and I'm going to try and get 2 lenses which cover the majority of that. Higher quality glass that will really allow the D850 to really excel like it should. As yet, I haven't decided exactly what lenses I'm going to go for. I think I'm probably looking at a 24-70 and probably a 70-200 at the moment. There's a number of manufacturers that I'm looking at, Nikon, Tamron, Sigma, all have quite good lenses in that range. So I'm going to do a bit of research and make my purchases soon. So yeah, in future vlog videos I will cover off those new purchases and hopefully they'll be worth it. Or alternatively, I could have made a massive mistake and I'll be full of regret. So if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and tune into future videos to find out my thoughts on my new lens purchases.